The small neighborhood kindergarten park was full of laughter and excitement. Colorful balloons hung from the trees, and a banner stretched across the playground entrance that read "Happy Father's Day." Children ran across the grass, holding their fathers' hands. Some were playing games, others were painting small cards for their dads. Teachers smiled as they watched families enjoy the special day together. But near the edge of the playground, one little boy stood quietly. His name was Liam, only 5 years old. Liam held a small handmade card in his hands. The card was decorated with crayons and bright colors. But his expression was not happy like the other children. He watched as kids ran toward their fathers, laughing and shouting with excitement. But no one came for him. 2 years earlier, Liam had lost his father in a tragic accident. Since then, Father's Day had always been the hardest day of the year. His mother Emily had tried her best to make him feel better. But a mother could never fully replace the role of a father in moments like this. Liam slowly sat down on a small wooden bench near the playground fence, staring quietly at the card in his hands. Just then, the deep rumble of a motorcycle engine echoed from the nearby street. A large black motorcycle slowly rolled into the parking lot beside the park. The rider stepped off. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and looked intimidating at first glance. His name was Jack. Jack was a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. His thick beard, heavy boots, and black leather jacket covered in patches made him look like someone who had spent years riding long roads and facing tough situations. Jack had only stopped to grab a drink from a nearby shop, but as he walked past the playground fence, something caught his attention. A small boy standing completely alone. Jack slowed down. For a moment, he simply stood there watching. Something about the boy's quiet face made him stop walking.
Jack leaned casually against the metal fence, watching the playground quietly. Normally, he wouldn't have paid attention. A biker like him wasn't exactly the type of person who stopped to observe children's events, but the boy's face told a story. Liam slowly looked up from the card and noticed the tall biker standing outside the fence. Instead of feeling scared, he seemed curious. Jack gave a small nod, unsure what else to do. For a moment they simply looked at each other. Then Liam slowly stood up and walked toward the fence. The teachers were busy helping other children with games, so no one noticed the small moment unfolding near the edge of the playground. Liam stopped, just a few feet away from Jack. Up close, the biker looked even bigger. His jacket patches, thick beard, and serious expression could easily scare most people. But Liam simply held up the small Father's Day card. "My dad can't come today," the boy said quietly. Jack blinked, surprised. There was something painfully honest in the boy's voice. The sounds of laughter and games continued behind them. But Liam stood there silently, waiting. Then he said something that Jack never expected. Liam looked up at Jack with hopeful eyes. The little boy was small, barely reaching the biker's waist, but there was something incredibly brave in the way he stood there. His tiny hands clutched a colorful Father's Day card he had carefully made in class earlier that morning. "Just for today," he said softly. Jack leaned down slightly, bringing his ear closer so he could hear the boy over the laughter and noise coming from the playground behind them. The little boy slowly held the card out toward him. His hands trembled just a little. "Will you be my dad?" The question hung in the air. For a moment, everything around them seemed to fade. The sounds of children laughing, the music playing near the playground, even the warm afternoon breeze moving through the trees. Jack didn't move. He simply stared at the boy standing in front of him. Jack had faced many things in his life. He had ridden his motorcycle across endless highways through pouring rain and dangerous storms. He had been in fights, dealt with rough people, and survived situations that most people would run away from. But somehow, this simple question from a 5-year-old boy felt heavier than anything he had ever faced before. Jack slowly lowered his eyes to the card in Liam's hands. On the front, written in bright crayon letters, were the words, "Happy Father's Day." The card was decorated with crooked hearts and colorful stars, clearly made with the careful effort only a small child could give. Jack hesitated for a moment before gently opening it. Inside, written in uneven handwriting, was a short message. "For the best dad in the world." The words hit him harder than he expected. A strange tightness formed in his chest. Jack wasn't used to feelings like that. Most people saw him as a tough biker, someone who rode long roads alone and kept his emotions locked away. But something about the boy's innocent request broke through that tough exterior. Jack looked back down at Liam. The boy stood there patiently, watching him with hopeful eyes, waiting for an answer. Across the playground, Liam's mother Emily had just arrived. She had been running late from work and hurried through the park entrance, scanning the playground for her son. Then she saw him, standing near the fence, talking to a huge biker. Her heart skipped with worry. The man looked intimidating, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black leather jacket covered with patches. His thick beard and heavy boots made him look like someone who belonged on a long highway, not near a kindergarten playground. Emily quickly walked toward them. "I'm so sorry," she said nervously as she approached. Her voice carried a mix of embarrassment and concern. "He just misses his father." She gently placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, ready to guide him away before the situation became awkward. But before she could pull him back, Jack spoke. "Well?" He scratched the back of his beard thoughtfully, still looking down at the card. Jack glanced around the playground. Fathers were running with their kids, laughing, lifting them onto swings, helping them play games. Then he looked back at Liam. The boy was still standing there, holding the card out with quiet hope. Jack sighed softly. "I guess." He paused for a moment. "I've got some time today." For a split second, Liam didn't react. Then his entire face lit up. His eyes widened with excitement, and a huge smile spread across his face. The kind of pure, joyful smile only a child could have. "Really?" Liam asked. Jack gave a small nod. "Yeah, kid," he said with a faint smile. "Just for today." And in that small moment, something unexpected happened. A tough biker who had spent most of his life riding alone had just become a father, at least for one very important day. The rest of the afternoon turned into something no one expected. When Jack had agreed to spend the day with Liam, he hadn't really thought about what that would mean. In his mind, it was just a small favor, a few minutes of helping a kid feel a little less alone. But as the Father's Day event continued, that small promise slowly turned into something much bigger. The teachers soon announced the next activity. "All right, everyone," one of them called out with a cheerful voice. "It's time for the Father's Day sack race." Children ran excitedly across the grass, dragging their fathers toward the starting line. The field quickly filled with laughing families preparing for the silly race. Liam looked up at Jack with excitement shining in his eyes. "Can we do it?" he asked eagerly. Jack looked down at the small sack in Liam's hands and chuckled softly. "Well," he said with a grin, "I guess we can try." A few minutes later, the two of them stood at the starting line with the other fathers and kids. Jack carefully helped Liam step into the sack. "Hold tight," Jack told him. When the whistle blew, the race began. Liam started hopping forward, laughing loudly as he tried to keep his balance. Jack hopped beside him, his large boots making it slightly harder to move quickly. Halfway through the race, Liam lost his balance and tumbled onto the grass. For a second, he looked shocked. Then Jack burst out laughing. The sound was deep and genuine, the kind of laughter that came from pure joy rather than politeness. Liam quickly started laughing too. Jack reached down and helped him back onto his feet. "Come on, partner," he said with a grin. "We're not losing this race." Together they hopped across the finish line, both of them laughing so hard they could barely stand. Nearby parents watched the scene with curiosity. At first glance, Jack looked like the last person anyone would expect at a kindergarten event. His tall frame, leather jacket, and thick beard made him look intimidating. But as the afternoon continued, everyone began noticing something surprising. The tough-looking biker was incredibly patient with Liam. After the race, they moved to the craft table where children were building small wooden toys with their dads. Jack carefully helped Liam hammer tiny nails into a small wooden toy car. "Easy," Jack said gently, guiding the boy's hand. Liam focused carefully, sticking his tongue out slightly as he worked. When the toy car was finally finished, Liam held it up proudly. "We did it!" he shouted. Jack smiled. "You did it, kid." Throughout the afternoon, Liam laughed more than he had in months. For the first time in a very long time, he didn't feel like the only child without a father. He was just another kid having fun with his dad. Later, Liam suddenly grabbed Jack's hand and began pulling him across the playground. "Come on," he said excitedly. Jack followed, slightly confused. They stopped at the swing set. Liam quickly climbed onto one of the swings and looked back at Jack with a big grin. "Come on, Dad," he shouted happily. The word hit Jack unexpectedly. Dad. For a brief moment, Jack froze. He wasn't used to hearing that word directed at him. But he didn't correct the boy. Instead, Jack stepped behind the swing and gently pushed it forward. Liam laughed as he swung higher into the air, the warm sunlight shining across the playground. "Higher!" Liam shouted. Jack pushed the swing again, smiling quietly to himself. Across the playground, Emily stood watching the scene from a distance. She had been nervous at first when she saw her son speaking to the biker. But as the afternoon unfolded, she realized something she hadn't expected. This rough-looking stranger had given her son something she couldn't, a moment of happiness he had been missing for years. Tears slowly filled her eyes as she watched Liam laughing freely in the air. For the first time since his father had passed away, her son looked completely happy again. As the afternoon sun slowly began to sink lower in the sky, the joyful sounds of the Father's Day event began to fade across the playground. The bright golden light of the evening stretched long shadows across the grass, and the cool breeze carried the final laughter of children who had spent the day playing games with their fathers. Teachers started gathering the decorations and folding up the tables that had been used for crafts and activities. Colorful balloons tied to the playground fence gently moved with the wind as families slowly began making their way toward the parking lot. Children walked beside their fathers, some still holding the small handmade cards they had proudly given them earlier in the day. Others were being carried on their fathers' shoulders, laughing and talking about the games they had played. It had been a beautiful day. Near the entrance of the park, Liam stood quietly beside Jack. The little boy held the small wooden toy car they had built together earlier at the craft table. His small fingers traced the edges of the toy carefully, as if he wanted to remember every moment of the day. His face showed two different emotions at once. He was happy, but he was also a little sad. The special day was ending. Jack stood beside him, looking out at the slowly emptying playground. The tough biker shifted his weight slightly, unsure what to say in a moment like this. For most of his life, Jack had been comfortable, riding alone on long roads with nothing but the sound of his motorcycle engine and the open highway ahead of him. But moments like this, they were unfamiliar. Liam finally looked up at him. The boy took a small step closer and gently held onto the edge of Jack's leather jacket. "Thank you for being my dad today," Liam said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. Jack looked down at the boy. For a moment, the rough biker didn't know how to respond. His eyes softened slightly as he studied the small child standing beside him. No one had ever said something like that to him before. Jack slowly crouched down so he was closer to Liam's height. He placed a large but gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "You're a brave little guy," Jack said calmly. Liam smiled. Behind them, Emily watched the moment quietly, her heart full of gratitude for the stranger who had turned what could have been a painful day into a memory her son would cherish forever. Jack slowly stood back up. The sky above the playground had begun to turn shades of orange and pink as the sun moved lower behind the trees. It was time for him to go. Jack walked across the parking lot toward his motorcycle. The large black bike waited where he had parked it earlier that afternoon. He pulled on his gloves, swung his leg over the seat, and started the engine. The deep rumble of the motorcycle filled the quiet evening air. Jack glanced toward the playground one last time. Liam stood beside his mother near the park entrance. The little boy lifted his hand and waved excitedly. A huge smile spread across his face. Jack nodded slightly in return. Then he slowly turned the motorcycle toward the road. As the sun dipped behind the trees and the golden light faded across the park, the biker rode away down the quiet street. Liam continued waving until the motorcycle disappeared from sight. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they arrive unexpectedly, change someone's day forever, and then ride away into the sunset on a motorcycle.